Summer Thursday is the CHGO White Sox Podcast. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. Welcome into the CHGO White Sox Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, the full CHGO White Sox crew. That's Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. You can follow him at Vinnie Duber. This is Herb Lawrence.
Hello.
You can follow him at Eckerwall23. He's our CHGO White Sox community leader. And our special guest today of MLB.com, Scott Merkin. You can follow him at Scott Merkin. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the AL Central dominating the AL playoffs. We'll be talking about John Schriffen and Steve Stone coming back for 2025. And then we will talk about the manager search that is ongoing for the Chicago White Sox. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Show the support for Merk here. Hit that subscribe button. We got a Bull show coming up at 5:30. So this will be a nice, tight hour of a show. Welcome in, Merk.
Thanks. My family doesn't give me that kind of applause, so
We're happy to have you.
I'm kind of impressed. I think it might have been a little canned, but I'll take it anyway.
A little can.
You didn't see everybody back in the corner over there?
Jay, can you guys cheer for Merk? Can you guys give him a round? Thank you.
There you go. Now I'm going to tear up.
Wow.
Now I'm going to tear up and not going to be able to focus the whole show now.
Perfect.
I'm very emotional at this point in my life.
How long have you been doing the Sox officially for MLB?
Oh, my goodness. I started in 03. I always go by, I tell the story 100,000 times at this point. Maybe not that many, but go by manager. 8 years Ozzie, 5 Robin, 4 Ricky. So what's that, 17?
And now it gets hard.
2 Tony Cairo, 2 Grifol Grady, and then my first year was Jerry Manuel.
Oh, nice.
03. So 22 years.
Very cool.
Yeah, you got to add in I guess if you want, when Ozzie left in 11, Coop managed for 2 years. So you can throw him in there too. But they've had a lot of managers over the last, part of it was Tony unfortunately got sick, but they've had a lot of managers that just they need to really nail this next one, whether it takes 3 years for the team to get good or they're good next year, which, who knows, but they can't, it's kind of like at the college football level, like switching offensive coordinators every 2 years, where you're recruiting guys in and you have this system, then like 2 years you got a new system, and they need a steady voice, especially since they're going to bank on these young guys coming up sooner than later.
Absolutely. 5 and 5. They had 5 managers in 5 years. Yeah. Going back to 2020, which was Ricky's last year. 5 and 5.
Every year of Luis Roberts' career, he's had a new manager.
That's crazy. I still think Ricky got a raw deal, but he hasn't been hired anywhere else, which is brought up to me when I bring that up. But I thought, Ricky and Vinny can attest this. Ricky held guys accountable, and he was good with them too. And just like any manager, there were certain guys who didn't like playing for Ricky, and there were certain guys who loved playing for Ricky. Ozzie won a World Series. One of the 2 World Series in the last how many years in Chicago? And there were plenty of guys who loved him, and he would readily admit there were guys who didn't like it. It's that way across the board. But I still remember Ricky standing with Jose Abreu and talking to him early on and saying, you're going to be a great hitter in this league, which he was until kind of Father Time caught up to him a little bit. But if, you may end up being a DH, you're going to have to put in extra work because you're not doing it right now defensively at first. Jose did that, and I think Jose, not going to make you forget about Keith Hernandez at first base, but he became a serviceable first baseman, and that's just an example. But Ricky's gone, so he's not coming back this time around either, but he was a very good baseball man and a good guy to kind of lead that team in the direction where they were.
Before we get to our main topic this segment, with Ricky, do you think that Rick Hahn and or Kenny Williams would have kept Ricky Renteria around if they would have known the next manager being Tony La Russa?
That's a tough question. I think we kind of, Rick never said it on record. We kind of knew who he was going for, who's now managing the Tigers in the LDS. I'm not sure if that was Kenny's guy. I didn't hear if Kenny was on board with that. And obviously Jerry wanted Tony La Russa in there. Jerry's the guy in charge. That's what happened. But I don't know. I don't know if they, I never really asked one way or the other on that. And, they did win in 21. Mm-hmm. So you got to give them that. And they won in 21 with a lot of key injuries. Now, granted, the division was terrible for 3 straight years, except for the division winner until this year where they're dominating baseball now. But even with the division being terrible, they had key. They were winning with Yermín Mercedes and Brian Goodwin and Jake Lamb, and nothing against those guys.
The Jake Lamb team.
They were performing.
Great memories.
And they were winning, and even if the division is bad, it doesn't mean that, they couldn't have been average too. They won 93 games that year. They had a great first half and tailed off a little in the second. But, you got to give credit there. But if you look at the big picture, I'm not sure. It's an interesting question.
Merk, it's very nice that you're staring down Sean after he asks you a question, but we're going to need you to talk into this microphone.
Oh, am I going away from the mic?
Yes,
all right.
yes.
Did they miss that? Do you want me to do the whole answer?
Yep, all over again. Start it, take it
We
from the
could
top.
restart it. Yeah, I mean, we got about 55 minutes.
Thanks for the applause. No, I'm kidding.
To you two, though, Vinny and Merk, you guys brought up the word accountability. It seems like Tony was at least able to keep the ship going in 2021. Was it his second year where that starts to fall off a little bit? Is it Tony getting sick and Cairo stepping in and that change? Is it just with Pedro's hiring in 2023? Like, where do you think the accountability kind of started to unravel there?
I mean, here's the thing. It's a saying for a reason, right? Winning cures all ills. And when you show up and win right away, I think it's probably a lot easier to get people to buy into what you're talking about. And then when the second year comes along, and let's all remember that by the end of 2022, when they went 500, 81 and 81, otherwise known as 40 fewer losses than they had this year.
Right.
Rick Hahn at the time said that was the most disappointing season anyone involved with the White Sox had ever been a part of, right? That shows you where the expectations were, and it also shows you how far they fell of those expectations. And, we don't need to – it's not too long ago. You don't have to pretend like you don't remember how disappointed all White Sox fans were at the time as well. When a team goes from you're supposed to do this to missing that mark by a big, big margin, the amount of losing at the time seemed very big. All of a sudden, the cure-all nature of winning a division goes away in a hurry, and we heard from a lot of players that year about how much just plain losing had affected them in that clubhouse.
You put two things in context that year. I mean, they were the definition of mired in mediocrity that year. They never got below 5 under. They never got above 5 over. So just when you thought they were about to, you were saying, okay, they're done, that's it, they'd win a few in a row. And just when you thought, okay, now they're really asserting themselves, here they come, because the Guardians won that year, right? And they had a great September. Otherwise, they were very average the whole year until September. So the chance was there. They went in that series against Cleveland.
Yeah,
2 games out,
game
right?
and a half,
yeah.
2 games, and then they lost 8 in a row. They lost the whole homestand. They got swept by Detroit. But the other thing is Tony was sick during that year. You can't talk around that. He, battled a couple different things with his heart and then cancer. And thank God, because it's much bigger than baseball. He's healthy, and we see him around all the time. He's been on probably more road trips than I was this year. So he's still very involved and good for that. But, I mean, that probably didn't make him maybe the same guy he was the year before, because, any of us, hey, I'm battling a cold right now, but that's neither here nor there. But, I mean, that's just, it's standard that you think if the guy is not feeling well and not at 100%, he's not going to be 100% overall. So, but yeah, like Vinny said, and then the interesting thing is Jerry last year when he met with us said that was the worst year.
I went back and looked at it because I wanted to compare. He called 2023, in which they won, or in which they lost
61 and 101.
20 fewer games than they did this year. Disgusting, embarrassing, and the worst baseball season he had ever been a part of. And then they lost 20 more games this year.
There was a story my boss told me where Joe Posnanski, who's a great columnist, was covering a Royals team that Buddy Bell was managing, and they ended up losing like 104, 100 whatever that year. And they had lost 18, 19 in a row, and they won. And Joe said to him, well, at least it can't get any worse. And Buddy said, don't say that. We don't know that for sure. And that's what happened this year. Now, I will say, no one wants to hear this, but this was a bad team. It had lost 21 in a row. And then I think the losing streak came during the trade, but then they traded 6 guys away at the deadline who were contributors on that team. So you couldn't expect a great finish. It still looked ugly. And it was ugly before it got to that point, very ugly before it got to that point. But when they trade those guys away, you're not going to expect, oh, yeah, well, new voice in there. And I don't even call that accountability, changing from Pedro to Grady. It was just a change had to be made. Accountability would have probably been when they went 3-22 if they made that change to Grady. Or then they had that streak where they were 11-8, which is pretty much it for this season. I think they lost 14 in a row after that. So at that point. But just the change had to happen. I mean, they had lost. I think it would have happened in Chicago if they still weren't on that losing streak going on that road trip to Minnesota and Oakland. So it happened when he came back. And, Grady did what he was supposed to do while he was in there. And I think Vinny can attest to it. Players really love Grady. They love playing for Grady. Whatever it is that he's doing there. And I don't mean that glibly. I mean, it's his first foray into coaching, really, when he was the major league coach this year, let alone his first foray into managing. Whatever he was doing seemed to work with the players regardless of the results.
And then to go back to Jerry before we get into some Grady stuff, the quote that sticks out to me, especially now that there's 3 teams in the semifinals of the ALDS, in this division with the core of talent we have, I would hope and expect that next year, 2024, is going to be a lot better than this year. And that's even after they trade all of those pieces away. So, what do you think a Jerry press conference would have looked like? Would he be using the same words?
Currently.
Yeah, would it still be the same words of disgusting, embarrassing?
I think it would probably be a lot more forward-looking. I think you have to remember that he was addressing not only Chris Getz being promoted to GM, but the fact that he made the change in general, right? All of his media session last summer was, why is this change happening? And right now it would be, what'd you think of that terrible season, right? So, I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to explain the shifting from one era to the next like he did last year. The statements that he's made, or at least the second one, very much to me reinforced his commitment to the path that they're on. And so I think that if he were to talk this offseason, perhaps when they hire the manager, maybe if he were to talk to us again, I would expect it to be very much of, hey, yeah, that was no fun, but we know where we're going. That was that way for a reason. We know which direction we're going in, as opposed to the having to come up with an explanation for why he did something as big as he did. In the White Sox world, there was nothing bigger than moving on from Kenny and Rick, right? Decades atop that department. He had to explain how it got to the point where he had to make that change, whereas right now, I think he doesn't, whether he feels that way or not about the season that just happened, he would have to be explaining the sticking with Chris and the moving forward and probably a little bit of, for lack of a better word, excitement about the future.
I think we can share this story about, well, first of all, the day Rick and Kenny got let go, I was legitimately talking to Rick on the field, like behind the cage at like 4:15, 4:20, and I had brought up something I'd heard about the future, and he just kind of laughed and said, well, we'll add that to the list of rumors I've heard. He goes, there's one guy who knows what's going to happen, and he's, in the office over there. So later that night, they were screening the movie about the hat.
Yeah.
Herb was supposed to go to it.
And Vinny and I were sitting next to each other in the conference and learning center, and I looked at my phone and saw it and held up Vinny, and he goes, I guess we're not watching the movie. We can get out of there. I mean, it was stunning. I think it was stunning for Rick and Kenny.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what to guess what Jerry's press conference would be like now. But I mean, he was not the only one who banked on the AL Central being bad to I don't think this is a question someone brought up to us, and we were standing outside the clubhouse in San Diego after loss 120, and a guy who does the video for what was NBC Sports said, what would you have thought would have been more likely back in the beginning of March? This team surprised people and got in the playoffs, or they set a record with 121 losses. And it's tough to say because no one thought they were a playoff team, although they did fight the rebuild pretty hard. The word rebuild, when it first started, they fought that pretty hard.
They fought the word.
Yes, they fought. Yeah, they knew they were doing it, but they fought the word. But no one thought they would be good. I don't think anyone thought they would set a single season record with 121 losses. So I would almost say the playoffs, if you look at what Kansas City did going from 56 wins to the LDS, I would almost say the playoffs were more plausible, which too bad you guys don't have the Jim Mora playoff sound thing here because that would have
playoffs.
But I mean, it's crazy that it happened that way, and now they're fully embracing this as a rebuild. Not only embracing, but saying it's going to take a couple of years to kind of get this right. We're not. I think Chris's line that he's used a number of times is, "We're not going to cut any corners,
no shortcuts,
just to get a quick bump." But I think Rick said that during it's a standard rebuild, standard rebuild line. So
he's following, just the company line. Let's take a break. We're going to talk about those AL Central teams in the second half. We want to let you know about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And the best part is there's curated deals, so you can find the best prices on great seats. You can have the seat view before you buy as well, so you're making sure that you're not getting any blocked or obstructed views. And you can also have all-in pricing. You could toggle this feature to show the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You also get the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference for tickets in the same section and row. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time. What time is it?
Game time. Brew.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
I was walking around outside today, and let me tell you, it's still summer. So if you want the best drink to go along with any of your summertime activities, of course, it's a Leinenkugel Summer Shandy, one of the most delicious, if not the most delicious beer that you can possibly find. And it's great for whatever you might be doing outdoors, whether you're having a nice little picnic down by the lake, or I've been using tailgating at the ballpark, but you're going to have to switch your sport at this point. But trust me, the beer still tastes good. But maybe you want a little different variety. Maybe you're like, I'm looking at the calendar. It says October. Fine, go get yourself an Oktoberfest. Leinenkugel has one of those too. They've got a honey Weiss, a berry Weiss, a Lakeside Cherry, a Sunset Wheat, or go north of the border, get yourself a Leinie's Original. Whatever you go with, it's going to be absolutely very tasty. So flavor life's simple moments with Leinenkugels. It's the official craft beer of the Chicago White Sox. Go to Leinie.com/CHGO to find delivery options near you. That's LEINIE.com/CHGO, or pick up Leinenkugels pretty much anywhere they sell beer. Leinenkugels, flavor the moment, celebrate responsibly. The Jacob Leinenkugel Brewing Company, Chippewa Falls.
Yes. All right.
That was very smooth. I thought he was just commenting on how nice it was outside. I didn't realize it was leading into something.
He's got to tell a story with the ad read, don't you, Merk?
Wasn't even an ad read. Vinny just loves Leinenkugel that much.
If Vinny just takes off actually 1 minute of each show to tell us about Leinenkugel.
Yeah, exactly.
It hasn't gotten annoying yet.
They're not even paying me. I just decided to come in, spread the word. The good word.
We are back here on the CHGO White Sox podcast with our guest, Scott Merkin of MLB.com. Let's talk about the upcoming playoff matchups, as you have the Guardians taking on the Tigers in one semifinal matchup, and then the Royals taking on the Yankees. The Tigers and Guardians were fairly even. Detroit won 6 of their 13. Cleveland won 7 of the 13, so just a 1-game edge there. Kansas City didn't face off or fare too well this year against the Yankees, going 2-5 against New York. Do the Royals have a shot? Maybe let's start there before we see the in-division rival. Herb, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I mean, once you have the arms that they have at the top of their rotation, you have a shot versus any team. I mean, Cole Reagans, you saw him the other day, who he pitched versus the Baltimore Orioles. Like, he's filthy. And then you just follow up with Seth Lugo, what he did. And usually Seth Lugo has been really good fielding. The other day, he couldn't field a ground ball right to him. But, yeah, they have the pitching staff, I think, to compete with the Yankees. Now, that Mickey Mouse ballpark is a different thing. A couple of those pop flies could go out of right field easily. Of course, the Yankees will be favored in this one, and I will be rooting for the Evil Empire, as I don't like the Royals. But that other series, mercy. That's a series to watch. Tigers have been on fire, the best team since they've gone on this streak. I think they won, 31 of their last 40-plus. They've been doing excellent work. If you look at their lineup, besides Tarek Skubal, there's nothing there, even though they just get the job done. You know what I mean? They're just a good, cohesive team with above-average players. And the Guardians, that's my model for AL Central, for the whole league. I love exactly how that franchise does with their players and their organization. Went from Terry Francona to Stephen Vogt and did not miss a beat. And I'm cheering for them over the Tigers in this series, because I think they're the team that can beat the Yankees if they go to the ALCS.
I want to ask about the Mickey Mouse ballpark thing. I hear that a lot from Sox fans. But it's not like they move the fence back when the other team gets up to hit, right? So they can hit it out to that, whatever it is, 301 in right field too. And good for the Yankees for building it. I mean, the Sox should do that, right?
They
build
should.
a team where you play 81 games. And I get it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great ballpark. I really do. But I get that there's been more than a few times where the Sox have been victimized. I remember one year they lost 5-1 on a LeMahieu grand slam that just barely got out at like whatever it is to right field there, just in the corner there.
215.
But the Tigers are interesting to me because what they're doing clearly over a long season is not sustainable. They literally have one starting pitcher, and he's the best in baseball probably, health-wise, I'm sorry. Chris Sale would be in there, but he's hurt right now, and they're done anyways. But Scooble's the best, and that always helps you, especially in a 2-game series, or best of 3, I'm sorry. You win game 1, then you just got to piece it together to win one more. And who knows if in a 5-game series, if he pitches twice in that. But to me, and I talked to a few people, I talked to Jason Benetti a little bit, and a few people in Detroit this past weekend. To me, it sounds like that they just, for 45 games, they're like, with the 2 wins here, they're like 32-13 in the last 45. They were 4 under when they came to Chicago and won all 4, which got them back to 500, obviously. They're just doing whatever Hinch and I think Chris Fetter, who is a former Michigan guy, the pitching coach, they're doing it. Like, so it's basically Scooble, and then they go to Bo Brisky and say, hey, you're starting today. It's, Wednesday. Tomorrow you're going to pitch 2 innings out of the bullpen. Thursday you may close, and then Friday you start again. And these young guys, they're all hungry. They're like, cool, let's do it. Let's run with it, And there's guys you've never – I've seen Will Vest pitch for a while. Vinny's seen Will Vest pitch for a while. He's been there. Brisky's got a good arm. But even on their offense, if you go by the star system, Riley Green's had a nice year. But that's pretty much it, right, on that team. There's really no one else. So it's amazing. And, give Hinch credit for getting them to this point and getting them into it. They wore 9 under at one point this year, so it's not like he's worked magic the entire year. They finished strong. That's all that matters, right? They're still alive. With that said, I think the Guardians and Yankees emerge from this. So I've been, as Vinny can attest, I've been wrong on many predictions in the past, but I really do think they're just the better 2 teams. I think the Royals have been a phenomenal story. So much fun to watch. Bobby Witt Jr., even other players talk about how much fun Bobby Witt Jr. is to watch. So just him alone on that team, Salvi Perez, Vinny Pasquantino, the additions of Lugo and Waka, the great additions they made at the trade deadline, small additions, and then the waiver claims they had with Gurriel and Pham, and then Ursich, I believe his name is, the guy from Oakland. He might be the best move at the trade deadline. Yep. But again, I just think the Yankees and Guardians are the better 2 teams there will end up winning. That'll be great LCS if that ends up happening.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Last night on the broadcast, the TV broadcast, they were talking about Bobby Witt Jr., and the guy said, I forgot which play-by-play guy it was. He said, Bobby Witt Jr., best hitter on the Royals and the best hitter in baseball all season long. Damn near threw my remote at the TV. Do you believe that Bobby Witt Jr., while I think Vinny before the season said that he believes that Bobby Witt Jr. was the best player in the AL Central by far, and so he tipped the cap to him. Do you think that Bobby Witt Jr. is the best player or the best hitter in baseball this year?
Vinny and Bobby Witt Jr. actually are very good friends, so that's where it came from. I'm kidding.
I wish you might be able to lend me a few dollars.
That's right. Yeah. Actually, Bobby Witt Jr. and Nicky Lopez were very, from playing together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nicky Lopez could tell you chapter and verse on him, but it's such a subjective question. He won the batting title, right? He hit for power. He can run. They won the game yesterday because he beat out an infield grounder that a lot of guys don't beat out.
Correct.
It's hard
and his defense.
Yeah, he's a great player overall. It's hard to argue with what Ohtani does, though.
That's what I was thinking.
54 homers and 59. So, it's insane. It's insane. But Witt also adds the dimension of, but you're talking offense. I don't know. It's if you had to pick one, I guess I would still say Ohtani.
That Judge guy's pretty good, too.
Judge isn't bad either. Could you imagine Judge? The Giants made a big run at him, right?
Yeah.
Could you imagine him on any other team of the Yankees? It just wouldn't seem to fit. But he's amazing, too. Yeah, good point on him, too. So there's a lot of candidates, I think. So you can pick Witt. Put it this way, and I didn't have an MVP vote, so I can say this. If Judge is not unanimous and Witt gets a vote or two, and that's what it appears to be in that way, it certainly would not be. You wouldn't be like, what the heck's going on? It would make perfect sense.
A KC beat writer is not going to get the same reaction of putting Witt number 1 as, let's say putting Yohan Moncada 10th or 5th.
10th.
Okay.
James is still getting dragged for voting, giving a 10th place vote to
I'd love to see it.
Was it egregious that year?
No.
It was great.
Someone thought it was.
What's the MVP is 10, Cy Young's 5, manager and rookie are 3?
Is rookie 5?
Rookie might be 5 too.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
I don't know. I haven't had rookie before.
I'm looking, though, at our AL Manager of the Year predictions. Vinny, you had Kevin Cash. You had Scott Service. I had Rocco
Jesus
Baldelli.
Christ.
So all three
Wow.
of our managers of the
Yeah.
year didn't even make the playoffs.
Mine's
So there you
not
go.
working anymore.
No, yours got canned. Vinny MVP was Witt. I had Adley Rutschman, or you had Adley Rutschman. I had Juan Soto, and none of us had
Okay.
Scooble. So there you go. We all missed
And no
out.
one
on
had
that.
Aaron Judge, huh?
No one had Aaron
Yeah.
Judge, which
When
is
it's like, we can't do
odd.
it again, can he? No.
He did it again.
And Adley
so did-
Rutschman,
I mean,
God, all the people I picked just suck now. Adley Rutschman's not good at baseball anymore.
He had a rough finish, right?
Oh, yes. Second half was just trash.
Yeah.
It's
Just
odd,
tired,
because
probably.
he walked into Major League Baseball just like kind of owning it.
I mean, that whole team.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If you're talking about rebuild and getting the prospects in line, my goodness. I mean, they've got them. That Norfolk team probably would have won like 40 or 50 games full strength in the major leagues. The way that I remember watching a game against Charlotte one day where I think they scored 10 runs in the first inning before they even got 2 outs. So that team was ridiculous. But yeah, it's something they're gonna have to investigate because, you get to that point in rebuilds, and I think the Cubs are there now too, where it's no longer cool just to get there. And the Orioles fans are well beyond that's cool. We got there 2 years in a row. It's like the Sox the second year. They were the wild card in 20. They won the division. And then went out in 4 games, right? And then they fell off the table. But at some point, you can't rebuild forever. You got to take that next step. So the Orioles have a lot to figure out on that after losing 2 straight. I don't think winning a game, right? Need their last 2 playoffs.
Which is good for Garrett Crochet's trade market. So let's go.
And I know that for more than likely, the White Sox and their organization will look at the 106-loss Royals team and say, yes, we might not do it next year, but that's an example of it's not too far away from you being a 100-loss team to being in the playoffs. All I ask for is who is the White Sox Bobby Witt that's going to be like elevating his game from where he is now to the next level.
But I think in that comparison, it's not about who's their Bobby Witt because they have Luis Robert Jr. You could argue that that's a guy who has MVP potential, if whether he realizes it or not. The comparison falls apart in that the Royals went out and retooled their major league roster enormously over the course of one offseason. They went out and spent a lot of money in free agency, and then they kept the pedal to the metal in player acquisition, like you mentioned, Merk, at the trade deadline and even after with waiver claims. This was a front office that was hell-bent on making signings to create a contender by the start of the season, and they did that. This offseason, we've already heard from the general manager of the White Sox that they're not going to be doing any enormous free agent moves or significant free agent moves, that they're going to be doing a lot of the same kind of things they did last winter. So I don't think the idea is, if only the White Sox could have a Bobby Witt, because, 29 teams wish they could have a Bobby Witt. It's they are not going to be able, they are unlikely to engineer a similar turnaround because they are not going to perform. Their front office is not going to perform in the same way that Kansas City's front office did last offseason.
Robert had about as complete a season as I've seen covering the team for 22 years in 23, right?
Yep.
And I still don't think he's Bobby Witt, even with that, right?
Well, and I wasn't trying to say that he is Bobby Witt.
I'm saying,
but
I mean, he's a very good player. You don't have to have Bobby Witt, but you got to have, better
Something.
people around him, and you hope that they step up. And, he had a rough finish after he came back. Grady was really good. Grady was really honest and straightforward and spoke from an elite player status, too,
Oh, yeah.
How many times do we hear from players when Grady took over about he played 3 straight seasons of 162 games? I mean, people love that he had been there, but he talked about how maybe the trade deadline and then just the work he put in to get back from a pretty significant injury just took its toll. Now, Luis played that down the last time we talked to him. He said maybe for a couple weeks, but not the whole thing. He just had an off season. You didn't even say who do you think is going to win in the 2 series?
Oh, the 2 ALDSs?
Yeah.
I would pick the Guardians over the Tigers. And while I think the Royals have been fun and would be really, really fun to watch them go a long way, that Yankee team is probably, especially of the 4 left standing, the one that is built to win the World Series of those 4. So I would like to see the Royals be the underdog and
Fun
keep
team to
being
watch.
the underdog, but the Yankees are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
You know what team is going to be interesting to watch is the Dodgers, because the Padres are loaded. I mean, that staff is as good as any, I think, from 1 to whatever they carry in the playoffs, 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you have guys who are working middle relief who would close for a lot of teams, and then forget the relievers, you have Cease, Darvish, King, who has been amazing since they got him in the Soto trade.
Musgrove went out last night.
Musgrove's health is, but I mean, you got four guys who right there who that'd be a great series.
Yeah, and the Dodgers too. I mean, it seems like they're running out of pitching. Will they try to tap into Ohtani?
But they still got Ohtani.
Will they stretch out Michael Kopech? We'll see. Let's take a break, and I do want to get into something Herb said about the AL Central. I also think I'll take the Yankees and I'll take the Guardians. I don't want to see the Guardians break their 80-year World Series drought, but be interesting to see them try to do it again. Let's take a break. We'll let you know about our friends over at CHSN and Rugged Road.
We're sponsored by Chicago Sports Network, the new home of the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across Blackhawk, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also bringing Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core. They are bringing it to, 3, 2, 1. And they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across our 77 neighborhoods and beyond. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more information on how to watch Bulls, Hawks, and Sox games all season long.
Thank you very much, Herb. We also want to let you know about Rugged Road. They're dedicated to creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Their products are designed with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, ensuring they perform in the toughest conditions. Whether you're on land or water, Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. They are floatable. One of the most unique features of Rugged Road coolers is their ability to always float upright. You'll never lose a drink. I'm just picturing someone standing in a creek, fishing. They catch a fish, and then
in a creek or a crick?
They put it in their cooler. I don't know the difference. Andrew Vaughn. Yeah. I picture Andrew Vaughn with a floatable cooler. You for sure can. What's the difference between a crick?
It's just the
pronunciation,
country way of it.
depending on where you live.
The country way of saying it.
I'm from where they say creek. It also has a lightweight design.
You're from Bubbly Creek. You're from where they say Bubbly Creek.
Yes. Unlike other heavy-duty coolers, Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip without compromising durability or performance. They're also durable and dependable. They're crafted to handle the toughest environments. Their coolers are built to last, ensuring they keep up with any adventure. The coolers are guaranteed to keep their contents cool up to 7 days, but often much longer than that. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers. They're reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head to Rugged Road Outdoors and use code CHGO for 10% off. We've always wanted to do shows outside. We can go over to Bubbly Creek and just, that could be our background.
There we go.
I
love that idea.
Lovely smelling show.
Yes. Well, I mean, nowadays probably wouldn't have want to have done a show from there back in the Stockyard days, but.
What's Bubbly Creek? I've never been.
It's where the stockyards used to be, and it's so acidic and full of animal carcasses that it's basically still alive.
Yeah. Hence the term bubbly. They poured so much waste in there that
it's still
turned bubbly. But now it's supposed to be very nice. It's got there's birds and stuff that live there. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. It's now a functioning place to survive.
You guys might be too young for this, but didn't the International Amphitheater, wasn't that around there too? It was near the stockyards, I thought.
That sounds right.
Yeah. I used to go see pro wrestling
because that's International Amphitheater is where the Bulls started, right?
It is,
and that's correct. Probably why they called them the Bulls, right?
Yep. 42nd and Halstead, Canaryville, adjacent to the Union Stockyards. Look at your memory, Mark. What wrestling shows did you see there?
AWA. Oh, nice. Bob Luce, Bobo Brazil, Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm dating myself a little bit, but it was a long time ago. Greg Gagne, Vern Gagne, he ran it, I think. So there you go.
Very cool. One thing Herb said, you talked about building teams the Guardians way.
Yep.
We heard from Garrett Crochet. Maybe they shouldn't be building the White Sox the Guardians way.
He doesn't want to do that.
Is that what they try to do in your mind? Like, do you think that Fast is the Guardian system? Because we did hear a little bit from inside the Sox clubhouse that Fast wasn't the White Sox way.
I think. The jokes about the Royals in the offseason, all the offseason picks, whatever. But if they were looking at a team in the Central to model themselves after, I think you can't go wrong with how you built the Guardians. Like SSA, tell me their center fielder the last 5 years. It's been changing. Same thing with their right fielders. It changes every time. And every time, whether it's the Noel guy or the Miles Straw guy, they perform, and once they don't, sit your ass out. There's another guy behind you that's going to perform behind you. They lose, who was that? Rosario a couple years ago. Don't skip a beat with Rocchio playing shortstop. Like, they just keep on going. And then when they recognize a superstar, luckily that superstar was, listening to, okay, should I take a hometown discount, or should maybe I get out to the free agent market and see all the rest of these teams and what they can offer me? He didn't get away from happiness. He was happy in Cleveland. They gave him money that he thought was fine with him. He would have made much more money on the open market, but he was like, I'm here. I'm not going to leave happiness. And they found Jose Ramirez at home, and now they love that guy. And he, unlike most White Sox free agents or people who sign long-term extensions, he performs after that. Like, he keeps on performing. So, yeah, whatever they're doing out there, and like I said, with the starting pitcher they had this year, at the beginning of the year, Shane Bieber, he left early. And they're like, who? I don't care about Shane Bieber. Another pitcher in there. That's how they do it. Klubat, same thing. They lose pitchers all the time, and they just replenish it with their minor league system, or go and get a person that is undervalued by another organization. They bring them there, like they did with Cal Quantrill a couple years ago, which, even though he wasn't great, like they did with the first baseman. I give him Bo Naylor and his damn brother Josh. Are all good now. Bo and Josh are good at baseball, and Josh sucked as a San Diego Padre. So whatever they're doing in Cleveland, that's the thing the White Sox should be looking at and saying, that's our focus. We should be like them.
Because of Judge and Witt, who we've talked about, has Jose Ramirez's greatness this year just been completely overlooked? What do you have? 39 homers, 39 doubles, and 40 stolen bases? That's insane.
I mean, it's another year that begins with a 2-0 for Jose Ramirez.
Right.
I mean, seriously, this is what happens every year with him. He is one of the best players in baseball every single season, and that's hats off to him for being able to be so consistent. And hats off to the Guardians for being able to lock in someone who's been able to be so consistent. But you could ask that same question, replace the names at the top, although Judge is usually up there, but replace the names at the top, and the answer would be yes, pretty much every year that he's played.
And they always have someone, like you said, Noel.
Yeah.
Big Christmas, I believe they call it. A few years ago when they beat Tampa in that, was it 15-inning wild card game, it was Oscar Gonzalez, right, who hit the walk-off home run. And he had the amazing run. And now he's not with the organization anymore. I don't know if he's with any organization, as a matter of fact, at this point. And Noel has been the great find this year. But I think what's interesting about Cleveland is they've done it in the past with pitching. They've had that great rotation, Tristan McKenzie and Shane Bieber. And they didn't have that this year. McKenzie's been in the minors for a good part of the year. Yep. Bieber was hurt after going 2-0 and dominating, right? And then he had Tommy John surgery.
Yep.
I think you can't overlook with Cleveland how great that bullpen is and how amazing Clase has been this year. Like, he's blown 3 saves, but it's almost automatic. Now watch, he'll blow like the first save in the LDS, but it's almost automatic when you get him that ball in the 9th inning.
Yep.
I mean, his numbers have been like, they were like Eckersley, like the year that Eckersley had like 3 walks and 85 strikeouts, or when he won the Cy Young. So Clase has just been, I mean, just been incredible. And that's what they do. They build that bullpen again with guys who you don't necessarily know a ton about, but they make it work. And Vogt has been a great step in, right? Right where you need him. So, but I think, first of all, I should say Crochet became phenomenal quote this year. Like, he was straight on with pretty much everything. I also got a kick, and I got nailed a few times where if he didn't like totally get the direction you were going with your quote, he's a little like Konerko that way. He wasn't going to bluff it. He would just be like, well, yeah, I'm not sure what you're saying. That's all I got on that one, that kind of thing. But he wasn't mean about it. He was great. Right. He did almost every interview that I saw asked of him, and was probably as dominant as a starting pitcher as anyone in baseball in the first half of the season. But I think his point is valid, that it's great to have the little acronym, or is that what I'm looking for? Yeah, the FAST. But one of our other writers, the great Lamont Pope from the Chicago Tribune, said, you know how you play fast? You have fast players. And that makes sense, right? I mean, and they just don't have that on that team. So I agree with what Herb's saying. You have to build the team like Cleveland does, but you have to build it to what you think will work for your franchise. So it's great that if you want to run, then build it that way. But if you feel like your ballpark is more built for power because you're playing 81 games there, then maybe direct it more in that. I mean, they just didn't have really a direction at all this year, right? They weren't built for anything except losing a lot of games this year. So we'll see what happens when they, move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris tried to build it defensively, but those guys were
That didn't
not
work.
that good defensively and slow.
Yeah.
So there you go. Just a bad overall baseball team.
Aside from that,
Yeah. We did have a break there, and we did talk about CHSN, the new venture for the White Sox, and where their games will now be broadcasted. We heard near the end of the year from Brooks. You guys heard from near the end of the year from Brooks Boyer that John Schriffen will be back as the voice of the White Sox, and then Steve Stone announced a 2-year extension, right? To
Multi-year
multi-year
yes.
extension with the team. And I think it said that would take him to retirement. So Steve Stone will be in Chicago for long. You were one of the only people that consistently got to talk to John throughout the year. What did you make of his first year, especially talking to him? What do you think his biggest takeaway was from year one?
So I talked to him Friday night before the game in Detroit, and I asked him a lot of things about the good and the bad of the year. And I will admit that because I'm at the game and don't listen to it all the time when I'm there or when I'm off, I don't always listen to every game. But, I don't know when we're there. From people I know who are diehard fans, they did say that as the year progressed, he got better. He toned it down a little bit. And one of the things he told me was that he liked how he improved the pacing. He slowed things down a little bit. And I will say this. I think Steve Stone was a big guiding force for him. I think Steve Stone really took him under his wing. And John's talked about this. And in the interview I did Friday, John said he talks to Steve about everything, not just baseball and broadcasting, but life and investments and everything else. Steve's a very shrewd guy. So I understand that. I mean, we talked about this in the press box. Whatever was good or not good about John, I think goes unnoticed if this team's even 500, right? They say it's the first year, let him have a shot. Now, again, Jason Benetti is one of the best broadcasters working. I'm not just saying baseball. As everyone knows in the world, I'm a Michigan graduate and a Michigan fan. So he broadcasts a lot of Michigan games. So I see him a lot of him on TV. He's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for a fact, just because I talk to people, not everyone was 100% enamored with what Jason was doing on the air. Now, Jason is a national star. I don't think you ever want to lose a national star. But, Jason is in a good place. And, I think Schriffen's going to have John's going to have a chance to grow with Steve Stone as his partner, and we'll see how it goes from there. But he was very, when I talked to him Friday, I think the story ran on Saturday, he was very upbeat about the season. He thought he had a good season. He's even more excited for next year, learning what he did this year. And he really appreciated, he went to a number of the tailgates around the ballpark and really appreciated the feedback he got from the fans, and even told some story I think I led with where a couple of the fans, the last one he went to, I forgot who held that one, but it was huge, he said.
Yeah.
And they even said to him, hey, we weren't the biggest fan of yours during the year, but you've gotten better and kind of grown on us. So I think he's happy, and he's dedicated to, keep improving and getting to another level.
That's one of the things that he did, in my opinion, very well. He ingratiated himself with the fans who were at the ballpark. You'd go to the 108 and the Whiskey at Comiskey by the sports bumps and say hello to those guys and girls. And that's very unusual for a play-by-play person to be that close and that personal with the people who are the 108 is one of the biggest fan groups the White Sox have. Right. So, to ingratiate yourself with those people so they can spread the message on, he's not that bad of a guy, was a good move by him. Now, this year two, I think he just needs to, clean it up a little bit. Some of that derisive and derogatory stuff that he and the score and all the rest of the people had needs to calm down, because it's just a baseball game at the end of the day, and he wants to win, the White Sox to win just as much as any of the fans do. So I'm here to give him a chance. I hope that he does learn from Steve, because Steve is the best color guy in the game, has been that forever. And Steve goes the way usually by his play-by-play man. So if Hawk is kind of mad and not talking, Steve's not talking. But if Jason's talking and giving him some good stuff, that's why I thought their broadcast was the best, because they played off each other so well. And that comes with time. My favorite broadcast of the White Sox was Ed and DJ, because I did the games and I got to listen to them, and their chemistry was great. Yep. And that's what happens when you have time together. Spend some dinners together, some off-season time together, and then you get to know each other's personality, and then just naturally work off of it. I think this year, initially, he's trying way too hard, and then, he got into himself, and he's like, okay, I got the job. They're not taking it away from me. All I need to do is be myself, and Steve's helping me along the way.
And I think that's a point that has to be stressed is that, first of all, the point that it's baseball is a great point, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, that he's got to keep, Steve in all the broadcasts, obviously. And not every single moment. You have to feed him a question every second. But Steve knows so much and is a step ahead of a lot of people when he's broadcasting. So make sure you use that to your advantage, too. And I didn't interview Jason, but I had a chance to talk to him that Friday after they clinched. And he seems ecstatic. So good for him. Jason's a great dude.
Oh, yeah.
Same high school, a few years after me. But
it's a great high school.
It is.
Put a lot of people out.
Flossmoor, the media capital. But good for Jason, and hopefully it all works out for the White Sox too. But again, I'll add one more quick thing. I've talked about this with Pedro. Pedro changed courses along his career where he was headed towards the front office and then went to the manager route, which he talked to us about at his opening press conference. He becomes a manager, and within the first month of the season that he's managing, the season's over basically.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse the next year. Well, John is not much younger, but he's younger than Pedro. And he's waited, he even told me the other day that people doubted him that he'd get to this level. He's waited for this opportunity. And the first year he broadcast, it's an historically bad team. Now, it may not be great next year either.
Yep.
So you got to keep finding things to talk about. But I think that needs to be taken into a little bit of consideration too, that the product was not great that he was broadcasting either. So
right, first year doing baseball period at a full season length,
as a team broadcaster,
and then also too, like, this is his first time doing a local broadcast.
Right.
I mean, mainly just a national guy where you're hitting the kind of surface level stuff where now you actually have to get into the weeds. So we'll see what year 2 looks like for Schriffen and Stone. I also think a little bit with Stoney, like, I think there's a big age gap there where it felt like Schriffen was a little bit more comfortable with Gordon at times. So I do wonder if, now Stoney being here a long time, if there would be a little bit more of a benefit to have somebody closer to John in age.
I'm sure that Stoney in his new contract got a couple of those road games off. So you'll be seeing some more Gordon Beckham. I'm sure next year. Stoney's like, West Coast trip? No, I'm good. I'm going back to Arizona. Mercy. I don't know why he sounds like Hawk.
Yeah.
Once you spend enough time around the White Sox, you end up sounding like Hawk.
Let's go into the biggest storyline for the White Sox this offseason, and that is the manager. Merk, when you hear the last words that Chris Getz said about Grady Sizemore being a part of the consideration for the job, did you take that as like a true? How real did that feel? Did it feel like more platitude? This guy has done a good job in the couple months he's been with, or is this like a true endorsement for a better lack of a word?
Maybe I'm one of the few who believes in it, but I think it would have been just as easy for Chris to say if he was not in consideration, because it was near the end of the season,
right,
to say he's done a great job. He's done everything we've asked. The players love him, which is true. They love playing for him, which is true. He's going to be part of this organization, but he's probably not going to be in the managerial pool. He's done that on other guys. He said that,
Yeah.
And I remember Rick saying that too, about Ozzie way back a couple hires ago, I think. But I think he's in it now. I think they're absolutely going to go through a in-depth process and talk to many people from many, I think Rick, when he originally talked about the process to hiring Pedro, I think there was 30 guys on the list when they started. I'm sure not all 30 got interviews, but I think it was down to like 9 when they ended up picking Pedro out of that. But there's going to be an extensive list to go through, and you'll get a lot of information about how other organizations are run and how that goes. So I get that. I think, if you're, I don't want to say this the wrong way, if you're thinking the next 2 years are going to be prime rebuild years, then why not keep Grady in charge and keep a guy who the players really seem to respond to as the guy? I guess what I'm asking is, Grady's that much different than hiring a guy who is the first base coach for Team X or the third base coach for Team Y. Now, if you can get a guy who's got experience like Schumacher, who is out there now, well, that's a different story. That's a guy who was a manager of the year just 2 years ago, right? So that's a totally different story. But if you're going with a coach who you think is going to be the next thing, I mean, why not give Grady that opportunity? You could even, give him a 2-year opportunity. And at that point, of course, sort of like the Doug Collins, Phil Jackson thing, right? At that point, reevaluate and say, is this the guy, now that we're ready, is this the guy going to take us to the next level? If not, you put him somewhere else in the organization, you find someone at that point. So I don't think, and Chris made this point clear, he has no leg up on anyone, but I think he's going to be considered. Whether he gets it, that's another question.
I always wonder, since the White Sox situation is so bleak right now, will there be people who would otherwise jump at a job because there's only 30 of them, just be like, this is going to take X amount of years. And, when I get to year 4 and nothing has happened, am I going to be the sacrificial lamb at that time for this team, a la, what Ricky did with both the Cubs and the Sox? Like, that's what I wonder about. Like, can the White Sox hire somebody that's both qualified and good, and then that person take the team to the next level? Or is that person, like you were talking about, just have Grady Sizemore be the sacrificial lamb, see what he can do, and then when it's time for them to actually compete, hire that guy at that time?
I mean, what did Pedro always say, right? There's fewer major league manager jobs than there are U.S. senator jobs, right? I mean, it is something that a lot of people spend their entire career striving to do, and you do not get an opportunity to do it very often. So I think there are a lot of people, maybe not everyone, right? But I think there are the vast majority of anyone who would be asked doesn't have something better to turn it down for. You're still managing a Major League Baseball team, and there then is the upside, if you see it that way, of trying to turn a team that just had the worst record in baseball history into the winner that Chris Getz envisions, and being his partner in doing that, and being able to say, all right, I'm going to be here for 4 or 5 years, and we're gonna go on this journey together, kind of thing. The people who can say, nah, I'll pass on that, are people who are already major league managers, are people who have already done the major league managing in their career, are people that are making so much money that there's no need to move positions. How many candidates are going to fall into any of those categories, right? And so while I'm sure folks can bring up names that they would just speculate on that candidate list probably includes a lot of guys, if not exclusively folks who have no business saying no. And and wouldn't want to say no at that, because it's still managing a Major League Baseball team. They still get to be the guy in charge on the bench for one of 30 clubs in the world.
It's tough to say no when there's so few. Vinny's right. When there's so few openings. I mean, I think, was it a few years ago, Mike Maddox was in the running for the Cubs job, and I think he turned that down, or he turned down the opportunity to stay as a pitching coach. But
I think so,
again, that he's one of the foremost pitching coaches of the game, so I'm sure he does pretty well for himself as well.
Last question I have for you guys. Even with McCullough, he was a former minor leaguer. We saw that with Pedro as well. It seems like guys are so impressed with Grady's resume of being a former major leaguer. Do you think that's a premium for Getz with this hire? Is getting somebody that has played Major League Baseball before, not even just, minor league ball? It's
been a premium for Getz in a lot of the other hires that he's made, right? He's stacked that front office with guys who played Major League Baseball, and it seemed to be intentional. It seemed to be, if not, we're going to make an organizational directive that you have to have played Major League Baseball. No, but the idea that those guys can bring a plus that other people can't. And certainly when you hear from the players, whether it's what Merk was saying earlier about Grady or what they say about Chris, right? They appreciate that vantage point. They appreciate that experience. And so whether or not it's Grady Sizemore, maybe you do see Chris Getz say, here's your new manager, and the players go, oh, that guy played Major League Baseball? That's a plus. It's not a requirement, but that's a plus, and that's somebody that I can relate to in a way that I couldn't relate to a guy who hadn't. So I don't think it's the end-all, be-all, but I do think that it would be a point in favor for anybody who might happen to have that on their resume.
And how much do the players' opinions matter? And how many of those players who have opinions will even be with the White Sox next year, I guess, is the second part of that. One thing I kind of disagree with is everyone who's hell-bent on saying it's got to be from outside the organization. I think there are teams that are struggling who have great people in their organization. I think there are teams that are on the cutting edge and winning constantly who may not have guys who are qualified to be, not qualified, may not be the best manager of all time, doing very well what they're doing. So I think it's just you find the best. I mean, we've heard so many different things over the years. We've seen so many losses over the next 2 years. I just think you got to feel really comfortable with whatever you go with this time. And again, maybe if it ends up Grady, maybe it's for a short term. But whatever you hire, whether it's a guy for 4 or 5 years or a guy for 2 years, you feel comfortable going forward that this team is going to improve during that time. I don't know if there's any, palette for saying, well, he's got to hit this, and this, as opposed to just this is the guy, and it stands out pretty clearly.
Yeah, I would think that any profession, I don't like to put sports professions with, lay people's profession. When you see a person that has done what you have done, understands what you go through on a daily basis, especially a grind of Major League Baseball, it's good to see a person that says, okay, he knows that, I want communication. If I'm going to be in the lineup on Tuesday, tell me on Sunday.
Right.
If he already knows, he knows that, as a bench player, I need this, that, and the other. If I'm a player that plays every day, I want to be batting third. The comfortability, the routine, same thing with the pitchers and stuff like that. So I think that, getting a person that that's been in the major league grind, not just a regular baseball player, because that seems like that's the prerequisite. You have to be some type of professional baseball player to be a major league manager. I think there's only like 8 in the history of Major League Baseball that's never played professional baseball. But to see a person that, especially some of those guys probably had Grady Sizemore on the wall. It's like, I saw him play. I was a fan of the Cleveland Guardians / Indians when he was out there. He can do some things. And what he tells me, I listen to because I saw him do this and he was at a high level and only the knee injuries took him out.
Yeah, and to Merck's point too of, if they stay inside the organization, they could always just, fill out that supporting staff around him with guys from outside the organization.
Absolutely.
Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We have a Bull show coming up at 5:30 on the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We want to give a huge thank you to MLB.com, Scott Merkin, their beat writer since 2003, for joining us today. Make sure you're following Merk throughout the offseason as he'll be putting out some pieces for Sox fans. That's Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. That's Herb Lawrence, our CHGO White Sox community leader. I'm Sean Anderson. Hit that thumbs up button, and we will talk to you tomorrow, where Vinny and Herb will try to name all 75 White Sox from 2024.
We all silly like the mayor.